Hey everyone, it's Chris here, and we are looking at the Rogue today. And we got a busy week. I'll put the schedule up on the screen. So we got the Rogue today, we got the Warlock tomorrow. That'll be great to do. The Druid, so many questions about the Druid, going to be answered on Wednesday. Then Thursday, the Wizard, my favorite class. And then Friday, if there's another class that's been getting a lot of questions, it's the Ranger. So what a packed week we're going to have. I will be doing reaction videos for all 5 of those. That wasn't my plan. I was planning to work on other stuff this week, but they came out with a schedule, and these videos seem to be doing well, and people seem to be enjoying them. So my plan is to continue doing them until they stop doing these videos. So I'm guessing we're going to see the other 4 classes next week. They haven't announced for sure yet, but I suspect they will. But today we're talking about the Rogue. And the thing with the Rogue is that, so we first saw the Rogue in Unearthed Arcana in Playtest Packet 2. And it was not good. They had taken Sneak Attack and they had nerfed it, so you couldn't do it off your own turn. And there were other quality of life reductions on the Rogue, and people were not impressed at all. So then we saw it again in playtest 6, I believe, and everything had been restored. So we had the old Rogue back, plus they added Weapon Mastery, which is nice on a Rogue. And they also added, Steady Aim was made a non-optional feature, which was nice. There were some enhancements on some of the subclasses, which was nice, and they added Cutting Strikes, which isn't really as much a power boost as it is just increase in versatility of use of Sneak Attack, because you give up damage in order to do these other effects. So it's kind of a trade-off, but it gives you some options. And in some cases, it's the right thing to do. Quite often, I think you'll just want to do straight damage. So we're a lot happier with that, and it did well in the surveys. And then came playtest 7 and 8, and we saw huge buffs for the Barbarian and the Fighter and the Monk, which are the other non-casting classes. And then seeing those improvements, and we now know that the Fighter and Barbarian, pretty much everything went through into the player's handbook. The question is, what about the Rogue? I'm not feeling as good about it as I did back in playtest 6. So we're going to see today what ended up happening with the Rogue, and I'll have some comments on it. But I have the player's handbook, so I've read it. I have my notes here for everything they've changed and everything they've kept the same versus the old rules in the playtests. So I'll be referring to this as they go along, but I can't reveal anything unless they talk about it. So if they talk about something, I'll have comments on it. If they don't talk about something, then I really can't tell you what they didn't tell you. And D&D Beyond has been publishing little articles that might offer some other details. And so if they get that article out in time, I'll refer to it as well. But it looks like we're about a minute to go here. So I'm going to do a quick edit, and then we're going to get going with the Rogue.
Our main job with the Rogue was to not mess it up.
Yeah.
Because it
was very sound.
It is such a beloved, solid class that our main goal with the Rogue was to take those really wonderful pieces of design and add some new twists. And so in addition to giving the Rogue Weapon Mastery, as we have several of our other classes, and Weapon Mastery, as you and I've discussed in another video, gives the Rogue and others some really exciting combo options and tactical abilities.
As we discussed, like short sword, with the knife, you're like hitting, gaining advantage on the next attack, lining up your sneak attack, stuff like that.
Glorious.
Yeah.
But
And I will add, in my playing around with Weapon Mastery, I would say that Weapon Mastery does work pretty nicely with Sneak Attack. They are a nice little marriage there. So I do think the Rogue getting Weapon, because Of course, the early version of the Rogue didn't have weapon mastery, and we kind of got the impression that weapon mastery is going to be for the warriors, which didn't initially include the Rogue. I'm very glad the Rogues ended up getting weapon mastery.
In addition to that, the other biggie in the Rogue is a brand new feature called Cunning Strike.
Yeah.
This ended up being a hit in the Unearthed Arcana series. And what Cunning Strike really boils down to is it gives the rogue the ability, starting at 5th level, to trade sneak attack damage dice for other effects.
Yeah.
Because we realized the sneak attack bucket of dice, it gets awfully big.
Yes.
And sometimes the rogue doesn't need all of those dice just to deal damage. So the light bulb that went off for us in our design process with the rogue was, well, what if we let the rogue do other things with those dice? Because my goodness, are there a lot of them. And so Cunning Strike was then born. Cunning Strike really is an answer to what if the rogue could do other things with those dice. And so at the start, what the rogue can do is can trade sneak attack dice to do things like poison their target, trip their target, withdraw from melee without provoking opportunity attacks, that sort of thing. Then at higher level, you get...
All right, so he has already revealed something that is different from the playtest. So he said that, at the lower levels, when you first get it, you can poison a target, you can trip a target, you can withdraw. Those were all available in the playtest, but there was a fourth option in the playtest for disarming your enemy. Disarm has been removed. Not sure why, but it's gone.
Even more options, and then you also gain the ability to pile on multiple options to the same sneak attack. And so it is all about giving the rogue ways to do more than just bucket loads of damage, without taking away the ability to do bucket loads of damage. Because sometimes the rogue will still want to just take all their sneak attack dice and apply all of it to damage. But in those cases where it would be more helpful for you to poison the target, knock them down, withdraw, or knock them out harmlessly, because at higher level the rogue also has even the option to just knock them out and not deal enough damage to actually slay them.
Yeah, you don't need to assassinate every NPC you meet.
Exactly. In addition to adding Cunning Strike to the Rogue's kit, we've also enhanced other features that were there. We took Reliable Talent and moved it to a lower level. We made it so that thieves...
Now, he hasn't said what level, but significantly lower level than it was level 11 in the Old Player's Handbook. You're going to get it much sooner now.
Can't now gives you an additional language in addition to allowing you to use Thieves' Cant. And we've also, at level 3, added a brand new feature called Steady Aim. This debuted in Tasha's...
Yeah, if you have Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, you already know about Steady Aim. It was the only optional class feature that the Rogues got in that book.
Cauldron of Everything. It's now graduated to the core books, and this allows the rogue to be steady and give themselves advantage on their next attack roll. A fact, let's put a pin in that, a fact we will return to when we get to the assassin.
Yes.
And the assassin is especially glad that Steady Aim is now in the book. We also even enhanced Slippery Mind at higher level, which used to just give you proficiency in wisdom saves. It now gives you proficiency in both wisdom and charisma saves. And the reason why that's relevant is it means now rogues will be harder to banish since most spells and other effects that forcefully teleport people away or banish them involve charisma saving throws.
Oh, interesting.
And we wanted rogues to have all around slippery minds and to really lean into the theme that not only are rogues really good at stealth, devastating single strikes with sneak attack, but they're also good at wiggling out of danger.
Yeah.
And a number of the rogue's abilities are all about wiggling out of either physical danger or mental or magical danger. And all of that together really, I think, achieves that goal that we had of take this rogue that's beloved, that's working really well, and just crank up the volume a little bit.
I love having extra things to do with sneak attack. I love turning that into a resource. We've seen that kind of design element with a couple of things in this new player's handbook, but that is something I adore because you always wanted to have the ability to potentially poison a target, right? Or to knock out a target. Even in the video games I grew up playing, like Thief and Dishonored, like that's all just very iconic for a rogue to be able to do. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, and again, just as with weapon mastery, it is something that we have loved playing with in our playtest games.
And again, you have weapons.
And I have played the Unearthed Arcana version of the Rogue multiple times in playtests, and it was okay. It's not your top damage dealer, at least in melee. At range, I think it's competitive with anybody, but at least weapon users. But in melee, a little bit behind. But basically, I think they're done with the base class, so I just want to recap. You basically, everything your rogue had before, they still have, almost. There's stuff that you don't care about that might not be there anymore. And then they have added weapon mastery. That's probably the biggest one. You're going to get an extra language with your Thieves' Cant. Steady aim is now a core feature. You will get Cunning Strike. You're going to get reliable talent earlier than you used to get it. You're going to get improved Cunning Strike, and then you're going to get an extra save proficiency with Slippery Mind. Everyone can select an epic boon at level 19. This includes the rogue. And there is one other little increase that they didn't mention, but it's something that's laid on. So that's pretty much it. And I think a lot of players were hoping there would be additional, like, improved scaling for sneak attack. That did not happen. And there are enhancements to some of the subclasses, which I think we're going to get into right now.
And mastery to play with too now
Yes.
as a rogue.
A rogue does not have as many masteries to play with as, say, the fighter, but still enough for it to make a difference.
Yeah.
And it gives the rogue some really interesting tactical mini games when, especially once Cunning Strike is in the mix,
Yeah.
to figure out each turn. It's like, okay, what am I going to do with my weapon? What am I going to do with my sneak attack? A lot of fun. Then contributing to the rogue's enhanced profile
Yeah.
are the 4 subclasses. Now, the rogue has its 2 classic subclasses, the assassin and the thief, and those are 2 archetypes in the rogue that go all the way back to 1st edition D&D. And it's all about, really, do you want to emphasize the killing part of the rogue's identity, or do you want to emphasize the infiltrator and treasure hunter side of the rogue's identity?
Right.
With the thief representing infiltration and treasure hunting. And then the other 2 subclasses that are available, just as in the fighter, we have the Eldritch Knight and the Psy Warrior taking the baseline class and mixing it with stuff outside the class. We have the same thing with the Arcane Trickster and the Soulknife in the Rogue, where you can take the baseline Rogue and mix it either with spellcasting in the Arcane Trickster or mix it with psionic power in the Soulknife.
Nice.
Shall we start with the assassin?
Yes,
or-
let's start with the assassin. My first character was
All right, so they're going to start with the assassin. I thought they were going to start with the Arcane Trickster. The first thing I want to mention about the assassin is if you want the mechanics for the assassin, you can get them right now because Colby at D4 Deep Dive did a video. He was given permission to share the assassin, and he did so. But we'll see what they have to say as well. But I would recommend, if you want to know the details on the assassin, check out Colby's video.
An assassin. So I've spent time with this subclass.
So the assassin is long been a very popular archetype, but the 2014 version of the subclass struggled in actual play. Too much of its core identity relied on surprising the other combatants in a battle, and that could be quite challenging to pull off. And since we've changed the surprise rules in the new player's handbook, we didn't want to have anything in the assassin that, of course, relied on that anymore. We wanted to, at the baseline, for the assassin's abilities to be more reliable so that you could feel like your subclass was actually doing something. And so with that in mind, we redesigned the assassinate feature. First off, it gives the assassin advantage on initiative rolls. This for us was something we planned on doing for a long time once we revised the assassin, because we felt that the assassin should have a better chance of going first than most other combatants, because of course to do their job of assassination, getting the jump on others is a critical part of that. Now, what we also did is we made it so that the extra damage that they can deal in the first round of combat is no longer reliant on someone being surprised, but instead simply reliant on the other person not having acted yet. So the two parts of assassinate work together. We gave advantage on initiative rolls so that the assassin is more likely to go sooner, and going sooner means they have more potential targets to use their assassinate on, because the requirement to use it is simply that the target has not acted yet in the combat. And we have found that in playtesting, this has achieved the goal of making the assassin actually able to use their core shtick reliably in most battles, unless the D20 is just totally cruel to them.
Right.
We also made a number of other enhancements, simple ones like in Assassin's Tools. We now not only give you the proficiencies that we gave you before, but now we also give you the tools themselves. We were chuckling when we realized that a decade ago we gave you these proficiencies, and then we're like, well, and good luck.
Yeah.
So now you actually get a disguise kit and a poisoner's kit when you reach the level where you get these proficiencies. We've also then, and this goes back to steady aim that we were talking about before,
all right, so I think we've covered all the level 3 stuff. So you get advantage on initiative. That's new and really nice. And then you are going to, in the first round of combat, you have advantage on attack rolls against anyone who hasn't gone yet, which you had before, so that's carried over. And now, if your sneak attack does damage to somebody that round, you're going to increase the damage equal to your rogue level. And so you should be able to get that in every combat, I would think. So, if you're a 10th level assassin, you should be doing an extra 10 points of damage in every combat you're in.
Completely redesigned infiltration expertise so that it still includes some of the mimicry that the assassin was capable of before, to make it easier for them to socially infiltrate certain places where they might be hunting someone or something down. But we've also now made it so that they can use steady aim on the move. Most rogues, when they use steady aim, can't move for the rest of the turn because they are standing still as they line up an attack. The assassin, who, in the narrative you can often imagine would be in a sticky situation where they might need to be moving John Wick style as they are battling people. We wanted them to be able to line up their shots even while they're running across the room.
Right.
And to me, this is actually one of the most cool things in the Assassin, just from a sort of cinematic standpoint.
Right. Yeah.
Is imagining them doing this. We have also replaced the imposter feature that they used to have and given them a brand new feature called Envenom Weapons.
All right, so we're on to level 13. So level 9, we have the Mimicry feature, which is actually significantly better than the old version, which was originally a level 13 feature, took 3 hours to complete, and this one, it's just easier. He didn't go into the details of the specific mechanics, but it's easier to use. And then, so your speed is not reduced to 0 for using steady aim. Notice he didn't say, because if you read steady aim, I'm going to put steady aim up on your screen right now. This is the version from Tasha's. And you can see it says, in order to qualify for steady aim, you can't have moved yet, and your speed is reduced to 0. So all roving aim does is it says your speed isn't reduced to 0. So the first qualifier is still going to be there. So that means if you are an assassin and you want to use steady aim and move, you're good. If you want to move and then use steady aim, you're not good. Okay, so basically the assassin's going to want to use steady aim at the start of their turn, and then they will be able to move.
Which ties into the new Cunning Strike feature in the baseline rogue, which allows them to deal more damage and ignore poison resistance when they use the poison option of Cunning Strike. We wanted assassins to be the best at using the new poison option that all rogues have access to.
Perfect.
And then finally...
so Envenom Weapons is pretty good. I would think when I look at the feature as well as the cost, I would think that as long as you're not fighting an opponent immune to poison, you're always going to want to use Envenom Weapons. It should be, at worst, flat for your damage, and just a free chance to poison somebody every round. And that's assuming they're saving half the time, which probably isn't the case.
Death Strike no longer relies on surprise. Instead, you just have to sneak attack somebody in the first round of combat, and you can potentially have your Death Strike.
So Death Strike is essentially the same as it was, except instead of having to have a surprised enemy, you'd only have to inflict sneak attack damage on them, which is you're going to do for sure. Death Strike is significantly enhanced.
We did Assassin, so...
Arcane Trickster?
Yeah, Arcane Trickster it's perfect. It's always been perfect. This is a hard one to improve upon.
Well, and the Arcane Trickster, because it was so solid and so fun, it, other than just getting some tweaks to integrate seamlessly into the rest of the player's handbook, really only got a few modifications and one bit of actual redesign. So first, on the front of just some nice enhancements.
There's more than one bit of redesign on the Arcane Trickster. That's significant. So I'm curious which one he's going to talk about.
The Arcane Trickster's spellcasting ability no longer has any School of Magic restrictions.
Perfect.
So that's a change from the playtest too. Because in the playtest, you had these restrictions when you first took Arcane Trickster, and then you had the option to switch out those spells as you leveled up. And I remember at the time thinking, what's the point of the restrictions in that case? It's just kind of an inconvenience at level 3 and extra rules that don't need to be there. So they've gotten rid of that. If it's on the wizard spell list, you can take it, which I think is a big improvement. I'm curious, are they not going to mention the other big improvement?
Like the Eldritch Knight, who can now use an Arcane Focus, the Arcane Trickster can now use an Arcane Focus. And the Arcane Trickster continues to be the awesome spell-wielding rogue who can use Mage Hand for endless shenanigans. And we then allow even more shenanigans with a new new version of Versatile Trickster, which we've redesigned to.
All right. So he talks about Mage Hand, and I cannot give you specifics, but the Arcane Tricksters, the other big change I was thinking of is the Arcane Trickster's ability to use Mage Hand has been enhanced. And I guess that's all I can say. Hopefully they put it in the article on D&D Beyond.
And now interact with Cunning Strike in the baseline rogue. And just as the assassin is now really good at using the poison option in Cunning Strike, the Arcane Trickster is really good at using the trip Cunning Strike, because now when you as the rogue trip someone, you can also have your Mage Hand trip somebody else. and so you can imagine everyone's distracted by the rogue doing something, and then over there the Mage Hand is going whoop, and then someone else tumbles down. So you will be able to get up to even more silliness as an Arcane Trickster. I have always loved this subclass for truly delivering what's in its name, being a trickster. Because there is so much prankishness in this subclass.
I thieve a lot as Arcane Trickster. It is a very, very fun subclass. Also really great at infiltration, at triggering traps without dying. Like is one of those perfect meshes of a rogue, adding magic to a rogue to just get by a little bit better.
And it sounds like a small thing, but in both of the Eldritch Knight and the Arcane Trickster, us removing the School of Magic restrictions in each of them is itself a big change, because it means you will be able to build a mix of abilities that you could never build in the past, because the School of Magic restrictions in the past really kind of hedged you in the type of Arcane Trickster you can build. And now you have way more options.
Perfect.
The other rogue subclass that
the final thing I will mention about the Arcane Trickster is they have a level 17 feature called Spell Thief that still exists. There was a change made to Spell Thief that is a straight out boost. It's 17th level, so maybe you don't care as much. And it's not a huge boost, but it was improved.
That is mixing in supernatural power with the rogue's baseline abilities is the Soulknife. For me, one of the things...
So just as we get into the Soulknife, a couple things I want to say about it is, first off, of course, we never saw the Soulknife in Unearthed Arcana, and we didn't even know that it was going to be a subclass. It was kind of a last-minute replacement for the Swashbuckler. But if you know about the Soulknife, there's some common complaints about the Soulknife, like its ability to only use its blades on their own turn. There's questions about how it interacts if you are multi-classed and you have extra attack. There are potential other issues with it as well, just weird wording and such. So I want to see what he has to say here.
That I enjoy about the Arcane Trickster and the Soulknife is they're not only siblings to each other as the two rogue subclasses that mix roguishness with supernatural ability, but they are also siblings to the other two subclasses in that the Arcane Trickster is basically the magical equivalent of the thief, and the Soulknife is the supernatural equivalent of the assassin.
Yeah.
And the Soulknife manifests this psychic blade and uses it to terrifyingly attack people and leave no trace.
That's the creepiest bit. Yeah.
And the Soulknife appeared originally in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It will feel much the same here, but it has enhanced presentation. It's now been fully integrated into the rule set of the new player's handbook. But we also made a couple of critical functional changes to the use of the Soulknife itself, because
I'm guessing what these are now.
So And they're just like in the Arcane Trickster. It goes a long way us lifting the School of Magic restriction in terms of how the subclass will feel. The Soulknife has two important changes to the Psychic Blades. One of them is you can now use them on your opportunity attacks.
Yeah.
This is probably the most requested feature for the Soulknife, is being able to use the Psychic Blades for opportunity attacks.
Yeah.
And now you can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The other cool thing that we've done for the Psychic Blades is we've given them a mastery property. We wanted the Soulknife to feel like they were still getting to use the fun of the mastery system even when using their Psychic Blades. And so the Psychic Blades have the Vex mastery property, which is the property that sets up your next attack to have advantage. Meaning, if the Soulknife is using their ability to make an attack with their action and then a second one with their bonus action, that bonus action attack can now have advantage thanks to the Vex of their first attack.
Yeah. So you are setting up your sneak attack very well, and you've got this extra weapon mastery.
Yes. So next up, the Thief.
Okay, so future Chris here. There were a couple things that I forgot to mention when I did the initial reaction, so I'm going to add it now. So Jeremy Crawford mentions that you can make opportunity attacks with the Psychic Blades now, and that they're going to have the Vex Mastery property. What he didn't mention, and I can't provide specifics, but I'm going to give some general information, there are slight changes to how psychic energy dice are determined, as well as to how they are recovered. And there is a pretty substantial improvement to the range on Psychic Blades as well. And I should also clarify something he mentioned. So he said that opportunity attacks are now allowed. So that's not all reaction attacks. That's just opportunity attacks. Now you can ready your attack action. You could always do that with a Soulknife. And you can make opportunity attacks. But something like the Battlemaster's Commander Strike that provides a reaction weapon attack, it's still not going to work with the Soulknife. So I think that's about it for the changes for the Soulknife. So let's move on.
Let's talk about the Thief.
So the Thief has a number of fun enhancements as well as redesigns within it. Our goal here was to just make the Thief even more thiefy. So one of the things that we did is in the Fast Hands feature, we've given the Thief the ability to activate magic items as a bonus action. Previously, Fast Hands did not apply to magic items, and now it does. And so the Thief will be able to take a magic item that requires a magic action for activation and be, thanks to Fast Hands, now activated as a bonus action.
Oh, perfect.
We've also made it so that
So yeah, a lot of people thought the old version did apply to magic items. I've had conversations with players who assumed that it did, and then we had to have a conversation. I would usually let them for the session, but it's nice now. It's clear they absolutely can.
Second story work, the Thief can now use their dexterity instead of their strength when determining their jump distance, and it now gives them a climb speed. It technically gave them a climb speed before.
Yeah, so not a lot of changes actually to second story work, mostly just semantics, because we got you get your dex modifier to be used when you roll for jumping. Before it, you got your dex modifier in extra feet when you're jumping. It's probably going to come out to a similar amount. And then the old version allowed you to climb at equal to your walking speed, but it didn't technically say it was a climb speed, but mechanically it essentially was.
Before, but did not call it a climb speed.
Oh, okay.
And so now it loops through the regular climb speed rules.
Right.
We've also given you a new cunning strike option in Supreme Sneak at level 9, which now allows you to make an attack while you're hidden and stay hidden.
It's nasty stuff.
And then finally, in Use Magic Device, we've given the thief the ability to attune to up to 4 magic items instead of just the 3 that most characters are limited to. It also gives the thief a chance of using a magic item that has charges in it, of not actually expending any charges when using the item. And we've also provided guidance on how the thief can use spell scrolls that they wouldn't normally be able to use. And so they're really great at kind of cheating a number of the rules in the game.
And that's the rogue.
Okay, so if we're talking about Supreme Sneak at level 9, you talked about remaining hidden. This is a Cunning Strike option, so there is a cost for it. But in theory, you should be able to save your bonus action on your turn for something else, like activating a magic item, because if you're always doing this, then you're always remaining hidden, then you always have advantage, so you don't need to use steady aim at all. So the assassin can move after using steady aim, but potentially the thief doesn't need to use steady aim once they get to level 9 ever. They can just hide and just stay hidden. So that's actually a pretty nice feature. Now, Use Magic Device. The old version allowed you to use any magic item regardless of class requirements, level requirements, but it didn't give you a casting stat. So sometimes you'd have spell DCs that were comically low. But now it's more structured. So you will attune more magic items, which is nice, and potentially use less charges, though your odds of that aren't great. And you can use spell scrolls. You will want your Arcane Trickster to be proficient and an expert in Arcana, and then you should have no problem with any checks on that. And then the 17th level feature, there's just a tiny enhancement on that. That's understandable.
It is a gloriously stealthy class that is now even trickier than it was before.
The new Player's Handbook is available for pre-order.
Okay, so I want to kind of do a final wrap-up of the reveal here. So there were a lot of questions from players to me going into this, and especially since I've gotten the new Player's Handbook, and I've had to be very cagey with responses. But is the Rogue now going to be the weakest class in D&D? Because the general consensus, is that spellcasters are more powerful than non-spellcasters, and the non-spellcasters are the monk, the barbarian, the fighter, and the rogue. We have seen the fighter and the barbarian already, and they got a ton of stuff. And the rogue got stuff too. Like, the rogue is objectively more powerful than it was in 2014, but it didn't get as much stuff. And, of course, with the monk, they haven't done a reveal yet, but we certainly saw in Unearthed Arcana they looked really good. So does that leave the rogue behind? And maybe, yeah. I don't think the gap is the same. Like in 2014, the monk was a lot less powerful than the next lowest class. I don't think we're going to see that kind of gap, but somebody has to be last. And yeah, I think it might be the rogue. Now, it depends what you want to do. Like I said earlier in this video, by my calculations, if you want to use a ranged weapon, rogue's actually a pretty good choice, especially if you're not wanting to mix with spells. I haven't done the full analysis of how spells are going to interact with weapons and done all the math yet, so I can't really comment on that. But if we're talking about non-casters and you want to use a bow or a crossbow, the rogue is going to be a good choice damage-wise. But if you want to use melee weapons and you want to do as much damage as possible, like if you saw my playtest videos, you'll know that I did some math, and the rogue was behind. Not a huge amount behind, but they were. And nothing here has addressed that. So, yeah, the rogue might end up being overall still the weakest class in D&D now. But I don't think we're going to see a gap like we did in 2014, where the monk was just totally left behind. But anyway, that's the rogue, and wow, tomorrow is going to be exciting because we are talking about the warlock. So I hope you'll join me. Talk to you later.